Hello. Hi, Sanket. Once again. Hey, Rakesh. Good to be back. Yes. Today you are wearing a white color t-shirt. Yes.
They were not winning.
Okay. Cool. Fantastic. I think we've spoken a lot about AI also in quite a few further episodes,
Yes.
right? Past episodes as well. Today, this is going to be a little bit of different. We're just going to go a little bit down to theory, but theory of execution.
Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
Theory of execution.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the last few days have been very, an AI Sputnik moment.
Yeah.
DeepSeek just coming in, doing a lot of things that nobody knew that possible, right?
Right.
Now, the thing is, does a small group of people
Mhm.
who are not bound by rules and regulations,
Yes.
can they? My question now is, can they perform much better than like a huge team that needs to go through multiple layers of approvals, basically red tape
Mhm.
kind of a layer?
Okay.
Do you feel like that always trumps,
Yeah.
the underdogs will always be trumping these
Yeah,
kind of a
yeah.
system? What's your thought?
Always. I think this reminds me of a very nice picture from, I guess, Economic Times,
Okay.
where there are dogs around there, like the utensil from which they feed in.
Okay.
There are like big dogs, and then there is a small puppy as well, eating from the same bowl.
Okay.
And this question was actually asked in an MBA class. What do you think this means? And that meant that among all the big players, there are also small players all the time coming and getting fed from the global market.
Right.
That's always been a question. Why do startups succeed when there are like multi-billion dollar companies or trillion-dollar companies coming in and putting in all their money? The answer is it's not about money. It's way beyond that. It's about drive. And the answer is staying unstructured. And that's what startups do. That's what small teams do. And this is a classic example. It comes from Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. They keep saying that it's not about the money. It's about like staying hungry and being unstructured, like random experiments. When you grow big, you have a lot of processes that comes in, and then that slows down big companies and corporates, and that's why the innovation ceases. And that's the whole point. Like you need, and you'll keep seeing these small companies or maybe small group of people doing something innovative, which big companies were trying, but they could not do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The drive, you mentioned drive, I think
Yeah.
is very, very important. I remember, I think, a lecture by Steve Jobs, maybe an engineering college, where he said that you need to actually build a business, to actually know something about a business, you actually have to grow a business on your own first.
Exactly.
If you don't own something, without ownership of something, you never know how to do it. But my question next is, right, any startup will eventually go through, let's say a successful startup at
Yeah.
least, you go through at least a series A, B, C, D,
Yeah.
and they will eventually grow into something big.
Yeah.
How does one startup maintain the drive that they started with? How do you carry that forward? Because you're eventually going to grow. Everybody's dream is to grow big, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you maintain that drive as you grow?
There are so many examples I can think of right now, but one of them comes from, as you said, Steve Jobs, right? This question was asked to Steve Jobs in one of the interviews, like how does he or how does Apple as a whole keep innovation at its core? And the answer to this was, Steve Jobs said something like this, that Apple is the world's largest startup. So he did not remove the tag of like
Being a startup,
being
yeah.
a startup, and that's why the culture of Apple and even like companies similar to that, even today you can see they are innovating at a similar speed. Although there has been a slowdown in Apple, specifically speaking.
Yeah.
But that came from, I think, Steve Jobs in around 2005 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think some reflection you also see in the way Elon Musk runs his companies. Like if you look at X or maybe Tesla, all these companies. There are so many stories of Elon Musk, how
He himself getting down and coding.
not coding. I think there's a story where he had to shut down one of the replication server, which was a backup server, and the engineers or the architects were like saying like we should not, but he himself went and unplugged the servers.
Okay.
At the mid of his flight, he asked to the pilot to like land somewhere where the secondary servers were, and he
Okay.
went there and unplugged himself.
Okay.
Right. So if he had to go through all the bureaucratic processes, definitely he could not have like done that. I mean, I'm not saying that's a good thing. Like to unplug your backup server, it might have failed too.
Yeah.
But the lesson here that we can learn is like remove all the layers, and as soon as you can go from the idea to execution mode, I think that's super important.
The fastest displacement part,
Yes.
basically.
And another thing that Elon always does is he directly speaks to the engineer who is working on something. He does not speak to his manager or the layers in between, because he knows that it's going to be slowed down.
Yeah.
Another example that he had set up like a whole new data center of AI computing in 11 days back to back, from the idea and to turning on those servers in 11 days, which was initially quoted as like 9 months or 12 months.
Okay.
So when you remove bureaucratic processes and steps in between, you can move faster.
Yeah.
And the good or the bad example comes from, I think, these
Yeah.
situations. So, yeah.
So, but don't you think like certain level of structure is necessary? I feel like a lot of people do mistake structure with bureaucratic processes, right? Structure, I feel like is, I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, but my personal feeling is structure is definitely necessary when you have a clear direction to it.
Yes.
How do you maintain that structure without getting into all the, layers of approvals, multi layers of miscommunication? That the more layers you have, the higher chances of miscommunication, correct?
Exactly.
So how do you still maintain structure without bringing in those layers? What are your suggestions?
Structure is super important. You definitely need processes, but I think you need to keep an eye on when that process is taking over your culture,
Right.
and that's when you like get right in there and then stop things.
This is going too far.
Yeah. Probably have checkpoints. Like say, if at your organization some specific thing, like say signing of a document, it's taking like a week. Then you get down to all the specifics of it, and then ask like where exactly is it slowing down. Speak to the people who are involved in the whole chain of signing those documents,
Right.
and then look at like where exactly is it getting slow, or do we even need so many like people signing the same file, or is it just two people who can sign it and just say okay,
Be done with it.
it's done.
Yeah.
So you need processes, because when you have a conflict, you definitely need a way to resolve it. And the easiest way to resolve a conflict is to get into a room and then talk it out, and then get out of the room with a solution, rather just sending emails after emails every day and then getting bogged down by the process. So structure is essential, but when it slows the company or any particular team down, I think that's when you take a call. Okay, what's going on? Yeah.
I think that's very, very important for everybody to know.
Yeah.
In general, what usually happens is you get into this whole rut of like, this is a process, I must follow this.
Yeah.
Right. So you yourself are boxed into that particular way of thinking. And I like something which you mentioned, culture, right? Culture should always be above that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm guessing that's the culture of innovation that you are talking about, or do you mean like a culture of drive, having the culture of continuing to be driven, continuing to be innovative? Is that what you...
It's a mega term. It does not stop at innovation. It also has pieces of excitement.
Okay.
Being happy, having a trust among your team members. It's a mega term. And when you have those freedom and slight platform of processes, I think you start doing good things. You start delivering more, and you are excited about work. You might not even care about 9 to 5, and you might definitely a structure and discipline is needed for everything.
Yeah.
But there are times when you go beyond that, and that's where the magic happens.
Right. And yes, I actually want to come into like a little bit more of the engineering and the building side of things. Right. We were talking about process. We were talking about structure. You build a lot of products.
Yes.
Right. How often is it that you have had an idea, you want to take it to production, but you know that you want to plan a roadmap, let's say maybe a Jira flow for it, right? How do you approach it to ensure that you still have that momentum going on without being, multiply bogged down by a lot of approvals, getting input from this area and that?
Yeah, I
What's
think
your process?
I would like to quote Naval here.
Okay.
He says that when motivation hits and when inspirations hit, you have to act fast
Mhm.
because it's going to die.
Okay.
And that's where you make a call to get into the whole process oriented way of doing that thing or what you like at that moment. And that's when I always, whenever I come up with an idea, since I have a bit of engineering side and design side and a product mindset as well, I straight away go to building the prototype without anyone's, without involving anyone. I try to take out time during the weekend, off office hours, and then try to build a prototype. As simple as that. For example, the latest tool that we are building, the design and code tool that we have been talking for a while, the first very basic version of the same thing, I built it in a day when I went for a meetup in Berlin.
Okay.
I was alone in the city and I had nothing to do. So in my hotel room, I did my first prototype of this design code tool. So the question is, when does processes come in? When do we start doing Jira?
Yeah.
So when you can't manage it over conversation and communication, when you cannot, when it's hard to document things, I think that's when Jira comes in. But it's like when you start, it's haywire. It's just keep on doing things, and once you reach to a point where you need some planning, then you stop there. So the first planning that I did was almost after a couple of weeks of building the prototype. Okay, this is something, but I did have some sort of plan in my mind, obviously, that okay, where is the use case, who are the customers, and how are we going to approach this in terms of marketing and sales. Those little details, I had it at the back of my mind, though I never documented it. Because I had a whole 360 degree idea of what I'm building, where the customers are. But to put pen to paper, I think that happened after 2 weeks.
Okay.
Then it keeps happening like every month. That okay, I go and clear up everything and then come up with a new document. Okay, these are the feature list and this is how we are going to build it. But it's more of do and the frequency of planning is less, though it's always there at the back of my mind, and it works for me. It does not mean that it would work for everyone else.
Yeah, correct.
So yeah, it's not one rule for everyone.
Yeah, makes sense. I feel like, so when somebody works on a project, right, there's always, I can name, I think, at least 10, 20 projects where I have seen myself start very enthusiastically, but because it took so long to execute, then maybe a mediocre version might have went out, which was not as, driven as the first instance you started, right? So I feel like that tip is there. Build it. Let's see what happens.
Yes.
Do the POC first. That POC mindset, the proof of concept mindset, is, I think, very important. I think we've gone into the creativity part of things a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just want to delve into that now. When somebody looks at an application, right, I think you're building a tool at the moment. How do you feel like you get that creative instinct? Are there things, do you have is it just instinct and inspiration in general, or do you feel like exposing yourself to a lot of different things can help you, consume a lot of things and build something that actually is creative? Or do you feel like it's pure instinct, pure inspiration, moment based?
No, it's not pure instinct for sure. So when you expose yourself, as you said, you are exposing yourself to a lot of information. And when you have a lot of information, you collect a lot of problems, and you pick the one that you can connect yourself with the most. For example, I connect myself with building a design code tool because I have been, like, you can say, a combination of designer and developer, and I keep seeing the fight. Okay, I have to do Figma and then I have to code, or maybe when I'm in a team, somebody is doing design, somebody is coding. So I see that I relate to that problem very close to my heart. And that's the only motivation for me to go and solve that problem. It's not that I went out looking for problems. It's that I kept doing things that I love and kept talking to people even outside of my bubble, and that exposed me to a lot of different information and problems, and then I keep solving it.
Okay. Yeah. That designer and developer conflict, I've been writing copies on bridging the gap between design and developer. I was writing for like at least a few months now at the moment. Why is it there?
I think it's deep rooted in our culture that we love to pocket things.
Okay.
That, okay, I am an artist. I am I'm a developer, I'm a designer, I am this, I am that. And that creates the divide. And that creates the divide like everywhere from top to bottom, in our mindset, in our culture, in our corporate culture, in the hierarchy. And as much as it's good, it's the other side is not so shiny and not so good, I would say. Because when you start labeling yourself into certain areas, you're also restricting yourself to not look into the other world. And that's where the problem happens. I mean, I have never looked at myself as a designer, developer, or even as somebody who is doing X or Y. I have always, I love to solve problems, and that's why I'm fluid. And that has helped me do a lot more, and that has kept me excited throughout my life and career. So if we stop labeling, I think that's when you have more freedom to do more exciting things. But the question might be like, how does it fit into the world where people are labeled into like this expertise and this domain? I'm not saying don't be an expert. You have to find your niche as well, but don't like build wall around you around
Basically,
that. Yeah, don't get too attached to that role. Like say if you are a developer, don't say that okay you are strongly only a developer. Okay, you always have different sides. So I've seen people doing just I'm a front end developer who just does this. Yeah, you are that, but you can also do something else as well.
You can also know something about everything.
Yes, yeah.
So basically, you're saying like be an expert in a crowd, in a large crowd.
It's hard. Yeah. It's so generalists is the word. Be a generalist, but also be an expert into what you
into one or two things.
Yes,
basically, yeah. Okay. Yeah, in that matter, I feel like people are going to that direction because last React Native meetup that we had, right? I met with someone who knew Flutter as well.
Yeah.
He came to a React Native meetup, but his core expertise was backend.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's happening a little bit.
That's good.
Yeah. So even like I saw one or two designers that could actually sit down and code. So I feel like the world is moving towards that, and I think people who don't do that might lose out on a lot of opportunities as well and inspiration in general.
Yeah. If you love to solve problems then that means that you're looking at the macro view of things. And with the advent of AI, people who has that mindset of looking things and looking at problems and inspiration, problem solving in general, I think they are going to have an upper hand in this whole new way of working.
A little bit to your tool that you're building, right? I know we're not taking names at the moment. We're going to do a launch, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I have this. So I was thinking about this a while back as well. It's a tool that allows developers to actually or designers to actually sit down, design directly an app,
Yes.
and the developer can just go code it. You can either do it in like a Figma like environment or go to like a coding environment and then change everything.
Yes. Right.
Okay. Now, are both of them going to be using it? It's I think now the line is very, very thin.
Yes.
It's permeable at this instant.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to be the future now of building applications? Now that this even the tool that you're building is coming in, right?
Yep.
Can anybody come and build one?
Yeah.
Who's in
Back to 1999.
Okay.
We had a tool called Visual Basic, where we didn't have anything like code and then design. It was a design first tool where you could actually drag and drop input boxes, button, and then right after that you would actually right click on the things like say a button and say on click do this, and then it would like say add two numbers from two input boxes and then print it on the screen. So it was there in 99. 26 years later, we don't have it.
Where did it go wrong?
It went wrong at multiple steps. So right after that, we had Adobe Flash. Adobe Flash, I used it a lot, which was very similar to Visual Basic. You had to start from the UI, and then you would later connect things using scripting. The language was called ActionScript. So I used that a lot. Like I built like carousel and multiple different things like drawing tools and all those things. But Adobe Flash got killed when iPhone launched because Steve Jobs was against embedding anything third party into mobile phones. Even and the browsers did not support Adobe Flash. And that's where it killed Adobe Flash altogether. And second reason was again responsive design, because Adobe Flash was and even Visual Basic was very fixed in terms of It was meant for desktops only.
Screen size.
Yeah,
This
screen
was
size.
yes.
There was nothing like flex design and
Okay.
responsive design, and that feature did not like land in Adobe Flash for a long time. And so we saw that it went, so that pushed us back like 10-15 years from like 2007-8 when iPhone came into the existence. And we have been trying to like come up with tools since then, but nothing came close to this. Even today, we have got design tools, but those design tools have, no code tools, which lets you somewhat do scripting, but the world has evolved into more of a declarative React sort of environment. So the challenge now is like, how do we like bring back that when we have a coding structure of React, which is very different. Like it does not have a templating engine. Everything is like running. While after running, you get some UI.
Yeah.
It does not have a template. So we have tried to like merge both the things.
Right.
And to your question, like where would we draw the line?
The line.
I think there's no line.
The line's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. So you either draw a rectangle or write div with some width and height is the same thing. So there's no line.
Okay.
And let's see like how are they going to use it, because right now we've just built it. They've got some early beta testers. We are getting good feedback. But let's see where it all goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be very disruptive. We started the talk with disruption. How small startups are going to do are underdogs and disrupt the market and create a huge round of a chain. I think this is going to be very disruptive in my opinion.
Hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yes, fingers crossed. On that note, I think that's it for today. Thank you, Sanket.
Thanks a
Thanks a
lot.
lot. Yeah. Thanks. Bye.